Who were these mysterious strangers who traveled thousands of miles following a star to find a newborn king? The Bible calls them Magi, history calls them wise men, and tradition calls them the three kings. But their true story is far more incredible than most people realize. They were likely Persian priests, royal advisors, and astronomers who risked everything on an ancient prophecy. What they discovered would change the course of human history forever. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel, consider hitting that like button and subscribing if you haven't already. Your support means we can continue producing more valuable content to help you learn something new or pass the time. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We'd love to hear from you. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? The Magi arrive at the edges of one of history's most sacred moments. They stand at the threshold between the old world and the new. Their presence transforms a simple birth into something cosmic. These mysterious visitors carry gifts that speak of kingship, divinity, and death. They bow before a child who will reshape human understanding. Who were these star followers? The question echoes through centuries. Some call them kings. Others name them wise men. The truth rests somewhere between legend and history, wrapped in the soft glow of ancient starlight. They appear without introduction, as if stepping from a dream. The Gospel of Matthew offers only fragments, a few verses, scattered details. The rest dissolves into mystery. Yet these fragments spark imagination. They ignite centuries of art, music, and wonder. Three figures on camels become the stuff of Christmas cards. Their gifts become symbols carved into cathedral stones. Their journey becomes a pilgrimage that millions follow in spirit. Beyond the familiar nativity scene, deeper questions wait. What drove them to leave everything behind? How did they interpret the signs above? What did they expect to find at journey's end? Their world was one of empires and omens. Stars carried messages from gods. Dreams revealed divine will. Knowledge meant power, and power meant survival. In this context, their journey takes on different meaning. These were not simple pilgrims. They were scholars, priests, perhaps advisors to kings. The East held many secrets in those days. Babylon preserved ancient wisdom. Persia practiced mysteries older than memory. From these lands of learning, the Magi emerged. They brought gifts suitable for royalty. They possessed knowledge to read celestial signs. They commanded respect from rulers and common people alike. Their arrival marks more than a birth announcement. It signals the beginning of something universal. Here, Gentiles recognize what Israel's own leaders miss. Foreigners bow where locals remain blind. The cosmic order shifts as Eastern wisdom meets Western prophecy. The star they follow defies easy explanation. Comets blaze across months. Planets dance in conjunction. Supernovas burst into brilliant life. Each possibility carries its own wonder. Each theory adds another layer to the mystery. More than astronomical puzzle, their star becomes symbol. It represents the human search for meaning, the longing to find purpose written in the heavens, the hope that knowledge can lead to truth and truth to transformation. As we follow their footsteps, we enter a world both foreign and familiar, ancient yet eternal. Their story speaks to something deep within us, the desire to seek, the courage to journey into unknown places, the faith to trust what calls from beyond our understanding. Tonight, we begin where they began, under starlight, with questions that refuse simple answers. With wonder that grows stronger in darkness, the Magi wait to tell their story. Their gifts lie ready to be unwrapped. Their mystery invites us to discover what they truly found in that humble place on that holy night when heaven touched earth through the hands of strangers from far away. The Gospel of Matthew, a cryptic entry point. The Gospel of Matthew holds the only biblical account of the Magi, just 12 verses, a handful of sentences. Yet from this brief passage, centuries of tradition bloom. Matthew writes with purpose. His gospel targets Jewish readers. He emphasizes Jesus as the promised Messiah. The inclusion of foreign visitors carries weight. These Gentiles recognize what many Israelites miss. The irony runs deep. Wise men from the East came to Jerusalem. The phrase appears without warning. No introduction explains who they are. No background is their origins. They simply arrive as if stepping from the margins of history into the light of divine plan. Matthew uses the Greek word magoi. This term carries multiple meanings. It can describe Persian priests, Babylonian astrologers, court advisors skilled in dream interpretation. The ambiguity seems intentional. Matthew leaves space for mystery. The text offers tantalizing details while withholding crucial information. We learn they follow a star. We discover they seek a newborn king. We find they carry three types of gifts. Beyond these facts, speculation begins. Where is he who has been born king of the Jews? Their question reveals their expectations. They seek royalty. They anticipate finding a palace, not a stable. Their search leads them first to Jerusalem, the obvious place for kings to be born. The star guides them, but not in ways we might expect. It appears, then seems to disappear. They must ask for directions in Jerusalem. Only after leaving Herod does it reappear to guide them to the specific house. This pattern suggests something beyond natural phenomenon. Matthew records their gifts without explanation: gold, frankincense, myrrh. Each carries symbolic weight that contemporary readers would understand. Gold for royalty, frankincense for divinity, myrrh for mortality. Together, they tell a complete story about who this child will become. The warning dream introduces another layer of mystery. Divine communication comes through sleep. The Magi receive clear instruction to avoid Herod on their return journey. They obey without question, suggesting they were accustomed to receiving such guidance. After delivering their gifts and receiving their warning, the Magi vanish from Matthew's account. They return to their own country by another way. The phrase carries double meaning. They take a different route to avoid Herod, but perhaps they also return as different men, changed by what they witnessed. Matthew's sparse narrative style creates space for imagination. He provides enough detail to establish the essential story. The rest remains open to interpretation. This technique appears throughout his gospel. He trusts readers to understand deeper meanings. The timing of their visit raises questions Matthew doesn't address. Did they arrive on the night of Jesus' birth? The text suggests otherwise. They find the child in a house, not a manger. Herod's later actions target children up to 2 years old, based on when the star first appeared. Each detail in Matthew's account serves his larger purpose. The Magi represent the nations recognizing Israel's Messiah. Their gifts foreshadow Jesus' identity and mission. Their worship models proper response to divine revelation. Their warning dream shows God's protection of the Holy Family. The gospel writer chooses to include this story while omitting countless other possible details about Jesus' early life. The Magi episode matters enough to preserve. It speaks to themes central to Matthew's message: the universal scope of Jesus' mission, the recognition that will come from unexpected sources, the opposition that will arise from predictable quarters. Matthew trusts his readers to fill gaps with their own understanding. He provides the framework, the broad strokes, the essential movements of the story. The details that fuel centuries of wonder remain deliberately vague. This cryptic entry point becomes doorway to endless exploration. Each generation finds new meanings in Matthew's brief account. Artists paint scenes he never describes. Theologians debate questions he doesn't answer. Storytellers weave narratives from his scattered threads. The gospel text stands as both complete story and invitation to discovery. Matthew gives us enough to believe. The rest we must seek for ourselves, following our own stars toward understanding. Persia, Babylon, and the Magi. The ancient world knew the Magi long before Matthew wrote their story. These mysterious figures emerged from the great civilizations of the East, where wisdom traditions stretched back thousands of years. Persia held the key to understanding who they were. The Persian Empire had conquered much of the known world by the 6th century before Christ. Within this vast realm, a priestly class emerged. They served the Zoroastrian faith, the religion of light against darkness, good against evil. Zoroaster himself had lived centuries earlier, perhaps around 600 BC. His teaching spoke of a cosmic battle between Ahura Mazda, the wise lord of light, and Ahriman, the destructive spirit of darkness. Fire became sacred symbol. Stars carried divine messages. The faithful waited for a savior who would restore righteousness to the world. These Persian priests, called Magi, possessed knowledge that rulers valued. They interpreted dreams. They read omens in the flight of birds, the shape of clouds, the movement of celestial bodies. Kings consulted them before making important decisions. Their wisdom could determine the fate of nations. But Persia was not their only home. Babylon, that ancient seat of learning, also claimed them. Here, along the banks of the Euphrates, scribes had recorded the movements of planets for over 1,000 years. They mapped the heavens with precision that would not be matched for centuries to come. Babylonian Magi inherited astronomical knowledge from the Chaldeans. They possessed star charts, mathematical calculations, and predictive models that amazed visitors from distant lands. When unusual celestial events occurred, they were the first to notice, the first to understand, the first to act. The word Magoi itself carried weight in the ancient world. It suggested wisdom beyond ordinary human understanding. These were men who could peer into hidden realms, who possessed keys to unlock divine mysteries. Roman writers spoke of them with mixture of respect and suspicion. By the time of Jesus' birth, Magi served in various capacities throughout the Eastern empires. Some advised Parthian kings. Others maintained temples in Mesopotamia. Still others traveled as merchants and diplomats, carrying their knowledge across trade routes that connected east to west. Their education began in childhood. Young candidates studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and theology. They memorized sacred texts. They learned to read the subtle language of signs and symbols. Only the most gifted progressed to become full magi, trusted with the deepest secrets of their craft. Fire altars marked their presence throughout the Persian Empire. These sacred flames burned continuously, tended by priest astrologers who watched the skies while maintaining earthly rituals. The light of their fires echoed the celestial lights they studied so carefully. Their libraries contained treasures beyond price. Scrolls recorded centuries of astronomical observations. Tablets preserved mathematical calculations. Sacred texts transmitted theological insights from generation to generation. When the Magi traveled, they carried condensed versions of this wisdom with them. The Persian Empire had encountered Jewish exiles centuries earlier. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC, he found Jewish captives who had preserved their own traditions during decades of displacement. Some scholars suggest this encounter planted seeds of messianic expectation in Persian consciousness. Daniel, the Jewish prophet, had served in Babylonian and Persian courts. His prophecies spoke of future kingdoms and coming deliverers. Persian Magi would have known these writings. They might have incorporated Jewish apocalyptic thought into their own complex system of belief. Trade routes connected the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Along these paths, ideas traveled as freely as goods. Jewish merchants carried stories of promised deliverers. Persian scholars shared astronomical techniques. The exchange enriched both traditions. By the 1st century, the Magi represented a fusion of ancient wisdoms. They combined Zoroastrian theology with Babylonian astronomy. They incorporated Greek philosophy with Jewish prophecy. Their knowledge crossed cultural boundaries as easily as their persons crossed geographical ones. These were the men who saw the star. These were the scholars who understood its meaning. Their background equipped them to recognize signs that others missed. Their tradition prepared them to seek the one whose birth would transform the world. The journey they undertook was both physical and spiritual. They left the familiar world of fire altars and star charts to seek a child whose light would surpass all others. Their quest represented the convergence of Eastern wisdom with Western prophecy, of ancient learning with eternal truth. Reading the heavens, ancient astrology and omens. The ancient world lived under open sky. Cities glowed dimly by oil flame and firelight. Beyond their small circles of illumination, the heavens blazed with clarity we can barely imagine today. Stars told stories, planets carried messages. The cosmos spoke to those who knew its language. For the Magi, reading the heavens was both science and sacred duty. They inherited techniques refined over centuries. Babylonian astronomers had tracked planetary movements for over 1,000 years. Their mathematical precision amazed even Greek scholars who prided themselves on geometric thinking. The 7 wandering stars moved against the fixed backdrop of constellations. Sun and moon governed day and night. Mercury raced quickly around the sky, completing its cycle in just over 3 months. Venus blazed as morning and evening star. Mars glowed red with associations of war and upheaval. Jupiter, the king of planets, moved majestically through its 12-year journey around the zodiac. Saturn, slow and stately, took nearly 30 years to complete its circuit. Each planet carried its own personality, its own influence on earthly affairs. The Magi understood celestial mechanics as well as their mystical meaning. They calculated when planets would come into conjunction, appearing close together in the sky. They predicted eclipses, those moments when normal order seemed reversed. They tracked comets, those hairy stars that appeared without warning to announce great changes. The zodiac provided their fundamental framework. 12 constellations marked the sun's yearly path across the sky. Aries, the ram, signaled spring's beginning. Cancer, the crab, marked summer's height. Libra, the scales, balanced autumn's arrival. Capricorn, the goat, marked winter's depth. Each zodiacal sign governed earthly regions and peoples. Aries ruled over Syria and Palestine. Leo commanded Central Asia. Pisces influenced areas near great waters. When significant planetary events occurred within specific constellations, the Magi knew which parts of the world would feel their effects. The houses of heaven refined their interpretations further. The eastern horizon at sunrise held special power. Planets rising in this position commanded attention. The zenith, directly overhead, marked the place of greatest influence. The western horizon, where celestial bodies set, spoke of endings and transformations. Dreams provided another channel of divine communication. The Magi understood that sleep opened pathways between earthly and heavenly realms. Important messages often came through nocturnal visions. Skilled interpreters could decode symbolic language and extract practical guidance. Timing mattered as much as content in their calculations. The same planetary position might carry different meanings depending on the season, the hour, or the broader celestial context. A conjunction in spring suggested new beginnings. The same alignment in autumn might indicate culmination or harvest. Birth charts revealed individual destinies. The exact moment when someone drew first breath determined their relationship to cosmic forces. Rulers routinely consulted astrologers before making important decisions. The position of planets at critical moments could determine the success or failure of entire campaigns. But the Magi sought signs beyond ordinary political astrology. They watched for events that transcended normal patterns. The birth of a true king would announce itself through unprecedented celestial phenomena. Heaven itself would proclaim such an arrival. Jewish scriptures, known to Persian scholars through centuries of contact, spoke of a star that would rise from Jacob. Balaam's prophecy in Numbers declared that this celestial herald would announce a ruler who would dominate the nations. The Magi combined this ancient promise with their own astronomical expertise. The star they followed defied normal categories. It appeared suddenly, suggesting either a nova or supernatural phenomenon. It moved in ways that ordinary stars do not, guiding them first westward to Jerusalem, then southward to Bethlehem. It stopped over a specific location, behavior impossible for natural celestial bodies. Some modern scholars suggest they witnessed a rare triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the constellation Pisces. This alignment occurred in 7 BC and would have appeared as an unusually bright star to casual observers. Such events happened only once every few centuries. Others propose a comet, those mysterious visitors that ancient peoples saw as divine messengers. Chinese astronomers recorded unusual stellar phenomena around the time of Jesus' birth. These observations might describe the same celestial event the Magi followed. Perhaps most intriguingly, some suggest they witnessed a nova or supernova, the explosive death of a distant star. Such events can outshine entire galaxies for months, creating new stars where none existed before. To the Magi, this would have signaled the birth of an extraordinary king. Whatever they saw convinced them to undertake an arduous journey across hundreds of miles of difficult terrain. Their astronomical expertise told them something unprecedented was occurring. Their religious understanding suggested this event marked the arrival of a promised deliverer. The heavens had spoken in their ancient language of light and motion. The Magi, skilled in reading these cosmic messages, responded with the dedication their knowledge demanded. They set out to find the one whose birth had been written in the stars. The Star of Bethlehem, a celestial puzzle. The star that guided the Magi remains one of history's most fascinating mysteries. For 2 millennia, astronomers and theologians have proposed theories to explain what these ancient stargazers might have witnessed in the night sky. Modern science offers several compelling possibilities. Each theory carries its own evidence and challenges. Each attempts to bridge the gap between the miraculous and the measurable, between faith and physics. The conjunction theory draws strong support from astronomical calculations. In 7 BC, Jupiter and Saturn came together 3 times in the constellation Pisces. This rare triple conjunction would have created an unusually bright appearance in the western sky, visible for months. Jupiter carried special significance as the royal planet. Ancient astrologers associated it with kingship and divine favor. Saturn represented Israel in Babylonian astronomical traditions. Their meeting in Pisces, the constellation governing Palestine, would have announced the birth of a Jewish king to anyone versed in celestial interpretation. Chinese astronomers recorded this conjunction in their detailed sky observations. Their records confirm that something unusual brightened the heavens during those months. The timing aligns closely with modern calculations of Jesus' likely birth date. The comet hypothesis offers another intriguing possibility. These wandering stars appeared unpredictably, blazing across the sky for weeks or months before fading away. Ancient peoples universally interpreted comets as divine messages, usually announcing the birth or death of great rulers. Chinese records mention a comet visible for over 70 days around 5 BC. This celestial visitor would have been bright enough to guide travelers and spectacular enough to inspire a long journey. Comets move noticeably against the star background, which could explain how the Magi's star seemed to lead them. The nova theory presents perhaps the most dramatic option. When certain stars exhaust their nuclear fuel, they explode in brilliant death throes. These stellar explosions can outshine entire galaxies, creating new points of light where darkness previously reigned. A nova would appear suddenly, exactly as Matthew describes. It would be visible for months, providing time for the Magi to plan and execute their journey. Most importantly, it would represent something entirely new in the heavens, worthy of the unprecedented birth it announced. Some scholars propose a supernatural explanation that transcends natural astronomy. They suggest the star was a divine manifestation, visible only to those whom God intended to guide. This would explain its unusual behavior and its ability to stop over a specific location. The text itself supports this supernatural reading. Normal stars do not start and stop their movement. They do not appear and disappear according to human need. They cannot guide travelers to specific houses within particular towns. The Star of Bethlehem acted more like a conscious guide than a celestial object. Recent research has explored the possibility of a planetary alignment so rare that ancient astronomers would have recognized its extraordinary nature. Computer models can recreate the exact appearance of the sky on any date in history, allowing modern researchers to see what the Magi might have witnessed. Michael Molnar, an astronomer and coin collector, discovered that Jupiter underwent a series of conjunctions with other planets while in Aries during 6 BC. Ancient astrology regarded Aries as the sign of Judea. The heliacal rising of Jupiter in this constellation would have announced the birth of a Jewish king. The lunar eclipse theory adds another dimension to the puzzle. On the night when Jupiter reached its highest point in Aries, the moon passed through Earth's shadow. This combination of planetary and lunar events would have created a spectacular celestial display. Yet each natural explanation faces the same challenge: how to account for the star's apparent movement and its ability to stop over Bethlehem. Planets, comets, and novas all follow predictable paths across the sky. None can hover over a specific location like a divine spotlight. Perhaps the answer lies in combining natural and supernatural elements. The Magi might have witnessed a genuine astronomical event that served as the initial sign. Their subsequent guidance to the specific house could have involved additional divine intervention. The star's true nature may matter less than its effect. It accomplished its purpose perfectly. It attracted the attention of qualified observers. It motivated them to undertake a difficult journey. It led them to the right place at the right time. Whether through natural phenomenon or supernatural miracle, heaven guided earthbound seekers to their divine destination. The mystery persists partly because it touches something deeper than scientific curiosity. The star represents humanity's ancient longing to find meaning written in the heavens. It embodies our hope that the cosmos responds to human need, that divine purposes work through natural events. Every December, when planetariums around the world present programs about the Star of Bethlehem, audiences lean forward in wonder. The same questions that drove the Magi still drive us. What signs point toward truth? How do we recognize divine guidance? What stars should we follow in our own searches for meaning? The star that guided the Magi continues to shine in human imagination. Whether it was conjunction, comet, nova, or miracle, it accomplished the most important task any celestial body has ever performed. It led seekers to the light of the world. A journey begins, mapping the route. The decision to follow the star transformed the Magi from observers into pilgrims. Behind them lay the familiar world of libraries and star charts. Ahead stretched hundreds of miles of uncertain terrain, political boundaries, and physical danger. Their journey began in the great cities of the East. Perhaps they departed from Babylon, that ancient seat of learning along the Euphrates River. The city's hanging gardens and ziggurat towers had amazed visitors for centuries. Its libraries contained astronomical records stretching back over a millennium. Or they might have started from Ecbatana, the summer capital of the Persian Empire. This mountain city offered cooler temperatures and cleaner air than the lowland capitals. Persian nobles retreated here during the hottest months, bringing their scholars and advisors with them. Ctesiphon, the winter capital, presented another possibility. Located across the river from ancient Babylon, it served as the administrative heart of the Parthian Empire. The Magi might have served at court here, watching the skies from the palace towers. Regardless of their exact starting point, they faced a journey of roughly 800 miles. The distance between Babylon and Jerusalem approximates the span from New York to Chicago, but ancient travelers covered this ground at walking pace over weeks or months. The great trade routes provided their most likely path. For centuries, merchant caravans had connected the cities of Mesopotamia with the markets of the Mediterranean. These established roads offered relative safety, regular water sources, and fellow travelers for protection and companionship. The Royal Road, built by Persian engineers, represented one of the ancient world's great achievements. Way stations provided fresh horses and supplies at regular intervals. Messengers could carry dispatches from Susa to Sardis in just over a week, a remarkable pace for the time. But the Magi traveled at the speed of contemplation, not communication. They needed time to observe the star's movement, to confirm their interpretation of its meaning. Their journey was pilgrimage as much as travel, requiring spiritual preparation alongside physical endurance. Water shaped every decision along their route. The Fertile Crescent provided rivers and springs, but vast stretches of desert separated the green valleys. Travelers planned their stages carefully, knowing that miscalculation could prove fatal in the harsh climate. The Euphrates River offered the most reliable water source for the first portion of their journey. They could follow its banks northwest toward modern Syria, then turn southwest toward Palestine. This route added distance, but guaranteed access to water and established settlements. Alternatively, they might have taken the more direct desert route, following ancient paths that connected oasis to oasis across the Syrian desert. This demanded greater skill in navigation and more careful preparation, but it shortened the journey by several days. Political boundaries complicated their passage. The Roman Empire controlled Palestine and Syria, but Parthian influence extended to the edges of Roman territory. The Magi traveled between rival powers, carrying credentials that would satisfy suspicious border guards. Their status as scholars and religious figures provided some protection. Ancient peoples generally respected learned men, especially those associated with temples and royal courts. The gifts they carried marked them as legitimate pilgrims, not common travelers or potential spies. Bandit attacks threatened all travelers in the borderlands between empires. These lawless regions harbored desperate men who preyed on merchant caravans and unwary pilgrims. The Magi's small party would have appeared vulnerable to such predators. Seasonal weather patterns influenced their timing. Summer heat made desert travel nearly impossible during daylight hours. Winter rains turned roads into muddy tracks and swelled rivers beyond safe crossing. Spring and autumn offered the best conditions for long-distance travel. The star itself provided their ultimate guidance, but practical navigation required additional skills. The Magi possessed mathematical knowledge that enabled them to calculate their position using celestial observations. They carried instruments for measuring stellar positions and marking time's passage. Camels likely carried their supplies and equipment. These remarkable animals could travel for days without water, carrying heavy loads across difficult terrain. Their ability to navigate by celestial landmarks made them ideal companions for astronomer pilgrims. The caravan would have included servants, guards, and guides familiar with local conditions. Such expeditions required careful organization and substantial resources. The Magi's journey represented a major undertaking, not a spontaneous adventure. As they traveled westward, the stars' position changed relative to the horizon. Each night brought subtle shifts that confirmed their direction and sustained their motivation. The celestial guide drew them steadily toward their destination. Archaeological evidence reveals the ancient road network that connected east and west. Roman milestones mark distances along major routes. Parthian way stations provide rest stops for imperial messengers. These remains trace the paths that the Magi might have followed. Their journey crossed multiple climate zones and cultural regions. They began in the flat river valleys of Mesopotamia, climbed through the hill country of northern Syria, and descended into the Jordan Valley. Each region presented its own challenges and wonders. The approach to Jerusalem would have been particularly significant. This was the goal they had announced to Herod, the place where they expected to find the newborn king. The city's walls and Temple Mount rose before them as the culmination of months of difficult travel. But their journey was far from complete. Jerusalem proved to be merely a way station, not their final destination. The star that had drawn them across continents would soon lead them to a humble house in nearby Bethlehem, where their true treasure waited. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, gifts with meaning. The gifts carried by the Magi tell a story deeper than mere treasure. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh spoke a symbolic language that ancient peoples understood instinctively. Each offering revealed beliefs about the child they came to honor. Gold needed no interpretation. Throughout human history, this precious metal has symbolized royalty, power, and divine favor. Kings adorned themselves with golden crowns and jewelry. Temple vessels gleamed with golden surfaces. The gods themselves were said to inhabit realms of eternal gold. For the Magi to present gold to an infant meant they recognized him as a king, not merely a future ruler, but one whose sovereignty transcended ordinary political power. Their gift acknowledged authority that extended beyond earthly kingdoms. The gold they carried would have been worked into specific forms. Ancient gift-giving customs demanded that precious metals be shaped into meaningful objects. Perhaps they brought golden vessels suitable for temple use. Maybe they carried coins bearing the images of Eastern rulers, acknowledging the child's supremacy over earthly powers. The practical value of gold cannot be ignored. This gift provided resources for the Holy Family's immediate needs. The journey to Egypt, necessitated by Herod's murderous intentions, required funds for travel and temporary residence in a foreign land. The Magi's gold made this escape possible. Frankincense carried different meanings altogether. This aromatic resin came from trees that grew only in southern Arabia and eastern Africa. Harvesting frankincense required dangerous journeys through desert regions controlled by fierce tribes. Its rarity made it literally worth its weight in gold. The sweet smoke of burning frankincense had risen from altars throughout the ancient world for thousands of years. Egyptian priests burned it in honor of Ra, the sun god. Hebrew worship prescribed specific amounts for temple sacrifices. The Greeks and Romans offered it to their deities in elaborate ceremonies. By presenting frankincense, the Magi acknowledged the child's divine nature. This gift declared their belief that he deserved worship reserved for gods. The infant in Mary's arms was worthy of the same honor given to the highest powers of heaven. The practical challenges of transporting frankincense across hundreds of miles speak to the Magi's dedication. This resin required careful protection from moisture and heat. Special containers preserved its aromatic properties during long journeys. The effort invested in bringing this gift demonstrated their commitment to proper worship. Myrrh completed the symbolic trilogy with darker implications. This bitter resin, like frankincense, came from trees in Arabia and Africa. But while frankincense rose in sweet smoke toward heaven, myrrh served earthly purposes related to death and burial. Ancient peoples used myrrh for embalming and preserving bodies after death. Its antiseptic properties help prevent decay during the mummification process. Wealthy families purchased expensive myrrh to ensure proper burial for their loved ones. The inclusion of myrrh among the Magi's gifts carried prophetic weight. They somehow understood that this child's destiny involved suffering and death. Their gift anticipated the cross that would claim his life, the tomb that would briefly hold his body. Yet myrrh served purposes beyond burial preparation. Ancient medicine valued its healing properties. Physicians used myrrh to treat wounds, reduce inflammation, and ease pain. Perhaps the Magi intended it as medicine rather than embalming preparation. The Queen of Sheba had brought similar gifts to Solomon centuries earlier. Gold acknowledged his wealth and wisdom. Spices and precious resins honored his royal status. The parallel between Solomon and Jesus would not have been lost on students of Hebrew scripture. These three gifts also represented the geographical extent of ancient trade networks. Gold came from Nubia and other African regions. Frankincense grew in the deserts of Arabia. Myrrh originated from the same remote areas. The Magi's offerings demonstrated the global reach of their world's economy. The symbolic significance of the number 3 should not be overlooked. Ancient peoples regarded 3 as a number of completion and perfection. The 3 gifts acknowledged the complete nature of the child they honored: human king, divine being, mortal man who would taste death. Church fathers later interpreted the gifts as representing the Trinity. Gold symbolized the Father's majesty. Frankincense represented the Spirit's ascending prayers. Myrrh acknowledged the Son's incarnation and sacrifice. These interpretations developed centuries after the original events, but demonstrate the gift's enduring power to inspire theological reflection. The presentation of these gifts required ceremony befitting their value and meaning. Ancient protocols governed how inferior parties approached superior ones. The Magi would have prostrated themselves before offering their treasures, acknowledging the child's supremacy over their own considerable learning and status. Mary and Joseph must have wondered at these expensive offerings. Simple people from Nazareth would rarely have seen such wealth concentrated in one place. The gift's value probably exceeded their family's income for many years. But the true worth of the Magi's gifts lay beyond their monetary value. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh proclaimed a truth that would reshape human understanding. The child who received them was King, God, and Savior rolled into one tiny package. The gifts announced his identity before his own words could reveal it. These ancient offerings continue to inspire modern gift-giving traditions. Every Christmas, people exchange presents in memory of the Magi's generosity. The spirit of their giving transcends the specific items they brought. They modeled how proper worship requires offering our best treasures to the one who deserves them most. Jerusalem, a city on edge. The Jerusalem that greeted the Magi in the 1st century bore little resemblance to the peaceful, holy city of modern imagination. This was a metropolis under occupation, where Roman eagles perched atop ancient walls and foreign soldiers patrolled streets that had once echoed with the Psalms of David. The city sprawled across several hills, connected by narrow streets and stone stairways that climbed steep slopes. The Temple Mount dominated the eastern ridge, its massive platform supporting the rebuilt temple that Herod had transformed into one of the ancient world's architectural wonders. 46 years of construction had created a complex that amazed even Roman visitors. The outer courts could accommodate thousands of worshippers during the great festivals. Golden vine leaves decorated the sanctuary entrance. The Holy of Holies remained hidden behind thick veils, accessible only to the high priest on the Day of Atonement. But religious grandeur coexisted with political tension. Roman governors ruled from Caesarea on the coast, but their influence reached deep into Jerusalem's daily life. The Antonia fortress loomed over the temple complex, a constant reminder that Rome watched and controlled even the most sacred Jewish spaces. Herod's palace on the western hill showcased the king's taste for luxury and his need for security. 3 massive towers protected the complex. Gardens, pools, and elaborate guest quarters demonstrated wealth that rivaled anything in Rome itself. Here, surrounded by guards and luxury, the paranoid king plotted against threats both real and imagined. The city's population swelled during religious festivals. Pilgrims arrived from throughout the Roman world and beyond. Egyptian Jews brought their Greek-influenced traditions. Babylonian scholars carried their ancient learning. The streets buzzed with conversations in Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and Latin. Trade connected Jerusalem to distant markets. Merchants brought goods from Arabia, India, and even distant China along the Silk routes. The temple's ritual requirements created demand for specific animals, incense, and ceremonial objects. Money changers converted foreign currencies for the temple tax. But commerce could not mask underlying tensions. Jewish religious parties competed for influence and followers. The Pharisees emphasized strict observance of traditional law. The Sadducees controlled the temple hierarchy and accommodated Roman rule. The Essenes withdrew to desert communities, waiting for divine intervention. Revolutionary sentiment simmered beneath the surface. Some Jews remembered the Maccabean revolt that had temporarily freed them from foreign rule. Others looked for a Messiah who would drive out the Romans and restore David's kingdom. Roman authorities remained constantly alert for signs of uprising. The arrival of foreign visitors asking about a newborn king would have sent ripples of concern through the city's power structures. Such questions carried dangerous implications. Rome tolerated no rival claimants to authority. Even innocent inquiries about royal births could trigger brutal investigations. Jewish religious leaders faced their own concerns about messianic claims. False messiahs had appeared before, gathering followers and creating problems with Roman authorities. The Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, bore responsibility for maintaining religious orthodoxy and political stability. Herod's spies and informants maintained networks throughout the city. The king's paranoia extended to potential threats from his own family, let alone foreign visitors bearing gifts for rival kings. The Magi's innocent questions would have reached his ears within hours of their arrival. The city's narrow streets and crowded markets provided perfect conditions for rumors to spread and multiply. By evening, everyone would have heard about the Eastern visitors and their strange quest. Some would have dismissed them as harmless mystics. Others would have seen them as harbingers of dangerous change. Temple priests and scribes possessed the knowledge to answer the Magi's questions about messianic prophecies. They could quote Micah's prediction that Bethlehem would produce Israel's ruler. They understood the significance of David's birthplace. Yet their knowledge remained academic rather than expectant. The contrast between the foreign seekers and local experts revealed a tragic irony. Those who traveled farthest to find the king possessed the strongest faith in his significance. Those who lived closest to the prophecies showed the least interest in their fulfillment. Jerusalem's religious calendar continued its ancient rhythms despite the political upheaval. Daily sacrifices rose from the temple altar. Priests rotated through their prescribed duties. Levites sang psalms that echoed off stone walls. The sacred routines provided stability in an uncertain world. Markets bustled with activity as merchants sold everything from imported silk to locally grown olives. The aroma of baking bread mixed with the scent of spices from distant lands. Craftsmen hammered metal, shaped pottery, and wove textiles in workshops that lined the narrow streets. Water carriers brought fresh supplies from springs outside the city walls. The Pool of Siloam provided gathering places where news and gossip flowed as freely as the water itself. Public fountains served neighborhoods where families shared cooking facilities and common ovens. The wealthy inhabited spacious houses with private courtyards and elaborate decorations. Servants maintained gardens where fruit trees and flowers provided beauty and sustenance. These homes featured the latest Roman conveniences, hypocaust heating, imported furniture, and artistic decorations. Poor families crowded into small rooms near the city walls. Multiple generations shared minimal space and resources. They depended on daily wages from construction projects, domestic service, and small-scale trading. Economic uncertainty made them vulnerable to any disruption in the city's normal routines. The evening hours brought their own rhythm to Jerusalem's streets. Oil lamps flickered in windows as families gathered for meals and conversation. Torah study groups met in synagogues throughout the city. The devout recited prayers that connected them to centuries of faith and tradition. Night watchmen patrolled the streets, maintaining order and security. Roman patrols moved with military precision, their hobnailed sandals echoing off stone pavement. The city never slept completely, but it did quiet to a low murmur of ongoing activity. Into this complex urban environment, the Magi brought their simple question: where is the newborn king? Their inquiry would shatter the careful balance that kept Jerusalem functioning under foreign rule. Their innocent search would trigger events that would echo through history. The city that prided itself on being the center of God's chosen people was about to discover that divine purposes might work through outsiders rather than insiders. The very foreignness of the Magi would underscore the universal scope of the salvation they sought. Herod the king, paranoia and power. Herod the Great ruled Palestine with the iron fist of ambition wrapped in the velvet glove of architectural magnificence. His reign, lasting over 3 decades, transformed the region's landscape while terrorizing its inhabitants. The king who rebuilt the temple in magnificent splendor was the same man who would soon order the slaughter of innocent children. Born into an Idumean family that had converted to Judaism, Herod never escaped questions about his legitimacy. True-blooded Jews regarded him as a foreign usurper, a puppet installed by Roman power rather than chosen by divine will. This uncertainty about his right to rule drove him to increasingly desperate measures to secure his throne. Rome had appointed him king of Judea in 40 BC, but Herod spent 3 years fighting to claim his kingdom from rival claimants. The experience taught him that power must be seized and held by force. No enemy could be permitted to survive. No potential threat could be left unaddressed. His building projects announced his greatness to the world while providing employment for restless populations. The rebuilt temple complex in Jerusalem surpassed Solomon's original in grandeur and size. Foreign visitors marveled at its golden walls and massive stone blocks. Even hostile Jews admitted their awe at its splendor. Caesarea Maritima, his artificial harbor city on the Mediterranean coast, demonstrated engineering skills that impressed Roman technical experts. Massive breakwaters protected ships from Mediterranean storms. Aqueducts brought fresh water from distant springs. The city rivaled Alexandria and Antioch as a center of commerce and culture. Masada, his fortress palace overlooking the Dead Sea, provided a final refuge should rebellion or invasion threaten his rule. Storerooms held enough supplies to withstand years of siege. The palace complex featured luxury that would have been appropriate in Rome itself. From these heights, Herod could survey his kingdom and plan its defense. But architectural achievements could not silence the voices that questioned his right to rule. The Hasmonean dynasty, which had ruled before Roman intervention, still claimed legitimacy among traditional Jews. Herod married Mariamne, a Hasmonean princess, to strengthen his position, then later executed her when paranoia overcame political calculation. His family became a battlefield where love and suspicion fought for control. Herod executed his wife Mariamne, her mother Alexandra, and eventually 3 of his own sons. Augustus reportedly joked that it was safer to be Herod's pig than his son, since Jewish dietary laws would protect the pig from slaughter. The king's paranoia extended beyond his immediate family to anyone who might pose a threat. He created an extensive network of spies and informants who reported on conversations in markets, synagogues, and private homes. Suspected traitors disappeared without trial. Their families learned to speak carefully and avoid political topics. Despite his brutality, Herod possessed genuine political skills. He balanced competing demands from Roman overlords, Jewish religious authorities, and Gentile populations within his kingdom. He managed to maintain relative peace during decades when other client kings faced constant rebellions. His court attracted scholars, artists, and philosophers from throughout the Mediterranean world. Greek tutors educated his children. Roman architects designed his buildings. Jewish scholars found patronage for their studies. The palace buzzed with intellectual activity even as political terror lurked in the shadows. Herod's relationship with Jewish religious law remained complex and contradictory. He rebuilt the temple and respected Jewish customs when it served his purposes. Yet he also introduced Greek athletic competitions and built theaters where nude statues scandalized traditional believers. Economic prosperity marked his reign despite the political oppression. Trade flourished under the Pax Romana. Herod's building projects employed thousands of workers. Agricultural techniques improved, increasing food production. The kingdom's wealth attracted merchants and investors from distant lands, but prosperity could not purchase genuine loyalty. The king ruled through fear rather than affection. His subjects obeyed because they understood the consequences of resistance. Love and respect remained foreign concepts in Herod's political vocabulary. Religious festivals provided particular challenges for the suspicious monarch. Pilgrimage crowds could hide potential assassins or revolutionary leaders. Messianic expectations ran high during these gatherings. Herod's security forces maintained heightened alert during every major celebration. The Passover season held special dangers. This festival commemorated Jewish liberation from Egyptian bondage. The themes of freedom and divine deliverance resonated powerfully with people living under foreign occupation. Herod knew that religious enthusiasm could quickly transform into political rebellion. His final years brought increasing physical and mental deterioration. Ancient sources describe painful illnesses that may have included kidney disease, intestinal problems, and severe depression. Pain and medication affected his judgment, making his paranoia even more dangerous to those around him. The arrival of foreign visitors asking about a newborn king would have triggered every alarm in Herod's suspicious mind. His informants would have reported their questions within hours. His advisors would have counseled immediate investigation. The wheels of royal paranoia began turning toward their inevitable, tragic conclusion. Herod had eliminated every other threat to his throne through violence and cunning. He would not hesitate to destroy this new challenge, regardless of the child's age or innocence. The king who had rebuilt God's temple was prepared to make war against God's own son. The Magi and Herod, a tense encounter. The meeting between the Eastern scholars and the paranoid king unfolded in Herod's palace amid golden decorations and armed guards. Two worlds collided in that encounter, the searchers seeking truth and the ruler determined to preserve power at any cost. The Magi entered the throne room with the confidence of men accustomed to royal courts. Their travels had taken them through Parthian palaces and Babylonian administrative centers. They understood protocol and possessed the diplomatic skills needed to navigate political waters. Herod received them with calculated courtesy. His greeting masked the alarm their questions had triggered throughout his intelligence network. Foreign visitors asking about rival kings represented exactly the sort of threat that kept him awake during long, fearful nights. Where is he who has been born king of the Jews? The Magi's question struck the palace like thunder. Every courtier understood its implications. Every guard tensed for possible trouble. Herod's smile never wavered, but his mind raced through the possibilities. The king's initial response revealed his diplomatic training. He asked careful questions about their journey and their reasons for seeking this child. He needed to understand whether these visitors represented a foreign power or merely curious scholars following astronomical phenomena. The Magi explained their observations with the enthusiasm of scientists sharing discoveries. They described the star's unusual appearance and movement. They outlined their interpretation of its significance. Their scholarly excitement convinced Herod that they posed no immediate political threat, but their certainty about the star's meaning alarmed him more than military intelligence might have done. These were learned men, respected in their own lands. If they believed the heavens proclaimed a new king's birth, others might share their conviction. Royal births required royal responses. Herod's next move demonstrated his cunning. Rather than rejecting their claims outright, he embraced their search. He would help them find this child. He would even worship the newborn king himself once they revealed his location. The Magi must return with detailed directions. The king summoned his chief priests and scribes for an urgent consultation. These religious experts possessed the knowledge he needed to understand Jewish messianic expectations. Their scrolls contained prophecies that might explain what the Magi's star announced. The scholarly conference that followed revealed the tragic gap between knowledge and faith. The priests could quote Micah's prophecy about Bethlehem. They understood the scriptural basis for messianic hopes. Yet they showed no enthusiasm for actually finding this promised deliverer. In Bethlehem of Judea, they informed Herod, for so it is written by the prophet. The ancient words rolled off their tongues with academic precision. The ruler who would shepherd Israel would indeed arise from David's ancient city. Herod absorbed this information with growing alarm. Bethlehem lay only a few miles south of Jerusalem. If a rival claimant had indeed been born there, the threat sat practically at his doorstep. Distance would not protect him from this danger. The king requested a private audience with the Magi. Away from the ears of courtiers and religious officials, he could speak more freely about his concerns and their mission. The conversation that followed revealed both his cunning and his desperation. "Go and search carefully for the child," Herod instructed them. His voice carried paternal concern that masked murderous intent. When they found the infant, they must return immediately with precise details about his location and circumstances. The Magi accepted his commission with scholarly enthusiasm. They appreciated having royal support for their quest. Herod's interest in worshiping the child seemed to validate their own interpretation of the star's significance. They departed with his blessing and his secret curse. Behind his diplomatic facade, Herod's mind was already calculating the logistics of elimination. How many infants lived in Bethlehem? What age range would ensure complete success? Which of his commanders could be trusted with such sensitive orders? The king had learned through decades of survival that potential threats required immediate action. He had executed wives, sons, and countless others who might have challenged his authority. This newborn rival would receive the same treatment, despite his tender age. Yet something about the Magi's certainty disturbed even Herod's hardened conscience. What if their astronomical observations reflected genuine divine activity? What if heaven itself had announced this child's birth? Could earthly power successfully oppose celestial purposes? The king dismissed such concerns with practiced ease. He had defied tradition, murdered family members, and oppressed his subjects for decades without experiencing divine retribution. The gods, if they existed, seemed remarkably tolerant of his methods. As the Magi departed for Bethlehem, Herod began mobilizing resources for what would become known as the Massacre of the Innocents. His soldiers would soon receive orders that would haunt their memories. His kingdom would witness cruelty that would echo through centuries. The encounter between the star followers and the throne holder demonstrated the collision between earthly and heavenly kingdoms. The Magi sought a king whose authority transcended political boundaries. Herod defended a kingdom built on fear and maintained through violence. Neither side fully understood what they were setting in motion. The Magi expected to find royal accommodation for their scholarly quest. Herod anticipated eliminating another threat through familiar methods. Instead, they had triggered events that would reshape human understanding of kingship itself. The palace meeting ended with polite farewells and murderous plans. The Magi continued their journey with royal blessing and divine guidance. Herod remained on his throne, plotting destruction while the true king lay sleeping in his mother's arms, protected by the star that had called his visitors from distant lands. The secret warning: dream or divine intel. The night settled over Bethlehem like a soft blanket. Somewhere in the quiet darkness, 3 weary travelers found rest after their sacred encounter. Beyond the gentle breathing of sleep, something stirred in the realm between worlds. Dreams held profound meaning in the ancient world. More than fleeting images of the mind, they served as bridges between the earthly and divine. The Hebrew scriptures overflow with dreamers who received crucial messages. Abraham learned of his descendants' future through visions. Jacob saw angels ascending and descending a celestial ladder. Joseph interpreted dreams that saved Egypt from famine. Ancient cultures viewed sleep as a time when the soul traveled freely. The Persians believed dreams carried messages from Ahura Mazda, the god of light. Babylonian priests maintained elaborate dream libraries, cataloging thousands of visions and their meanings. For the Magi, trained in reading celestial signs, a divine dream would feel as natural as morning sunlight. The warning came gently but with unmistakable clarity. Return home by another way. Avoid Herod. The child you have worshipped needs protection, and your silence ensures his safety. This dream carries weight beyond simple warning. The Gospel of Matthew presents it as divine intervention, a moment when heaven reaches down to alter earthly events. The same God who placed a star in the sky now speaks through sleep. guiding these foreign visitors away from danger. Throughout biblical literature, dreams often arrive at crucial moments. They redirect the faithful, reveal hidden truths, preserve life itself. Daniel interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's troubling visions. An angel appeared to Joseph in dreams, first to accept Mary as his wife, then to flee to Egypt. The Magi's dream stands as part of this sacred pattern. Heaven protects its own through whispered warnings in the night. The message reaches beyond immediate safety, revealing a larger truth about divine care extending even to foreign seekers who journeyed far to worship. Ancient dream interpretation recognized different types of visions. Some arose from daily concerns, others from divine sources. The clarity and urgency of the Magi's warning suggested heavenly origin. Their response confirms this understanding. Without question or delay, they chose a different path home. This choice reveals something beautiful about their character. These learned men, accustomed to royal courts and formal protocols, abandoned courtesy for obedience. They risked offending a powerful king to protect a vulnerable child. Their wisdom extended beyond star charts and ancient texts to recognizing divine authority. The dream also highlights the interconnected nature of the nativity story. Each character plays a crucial role: Mary's yes to Gabriel, Joseph's acceptance of his calling, the shepherd's joyful proclamation, the Magi's protective silence. Heaven orchestrates these human choices into a symphony of salvation. Consider the timing. The dream arrives after the Magi have fulfilled their purpose, but before they can unknowingly cause harm. This precision suggests careful divine planning. The same God who guides stars also guides dreams, ensuring each element serves his greater purpose. The warning carries practical wisdom as well. Ancient travelers understood political dangers. Border crossings required careful navigation. The Magi, likely accompanied by guards and servants, would have planned multiple routes home. The dream simply redirected their existing plans toward safety. Their obedience echoes through centuries. Every time believers choose faithfulness over convenience, they follow the Magi's example. The dream warning becomes a model for how heaven guides those who seek divine will, above human approval. The silence that follows speaks volumes. The Magi disappear from Matthew's account as quietly as they arrived. Their discretion protects the Holy Family and preserves the unfolding plan. Sometimes the greatest service happens in the shadows, through choices that remain hidden from history's view. This divine warning stands as testimony to heaven's intimate involvement in earthly affairs. The God who numbers stars also whispers to sleeping travelers. No detail escapes his notice. No faithful seeker journeys beyond his care. The flight to Egypt, aftermath of the visit. The Magi vanished into the eastern horizon, their camels leaving only faint tracks in the desert sand. Behind them, the consequences of their visit began to unfold like ripples across still water. Herod waited. Days passed without word from his foreign visitors. The promised report never came. A man who had survived decades of political intrigue recognized betrayal when he saw it. The Magi's silence spoke louder than any message they might have delivered. Rage built slowly in the king's heart. These Eastern mystics had made him look foolish. Worse, they had discovered something he needed to know. Somewhere in Bethlehem, a child lived who posed a threat to his throne. The ancient prophecies spoke of a ruler born in David's city. Herod had spent his reign eliminating such threats. Meanwhile, another dream visitor appeared to Joseph. The same divine messenger who had first revealed Mary's miraculous pregnancy now brought urgent warning. Rise, take the child and his mother, flee to Egypt. Herod seeks to destroy him. The Holy Family's escape happened under cover of darkness. Mary wrapped her baby against the night chill. Joseph gathered their few possessions. They joined the ancient stream of refugees fleeing violence, carrying hope wrapped in swaddling clothes. Egypt offered sanctuary for several reasons. Jewish communities there provided safe haven for their own people. The distance from Judea placed them beyond Herod's immediate reach. Trade routes connected Egypt to Palestine, making travel possible though dangerous. The journey south stretched across harsh terrain. Desert roads tested even experienced travelers. A young mother with an infant faced particular hardships. Water sources lay far apart. Bandits threatened lonely travelers. Roman patrols asked uncomfortable questions at border crossings. Yet this flight fulfilled ancient prophecy. Hosea had written centuries earlier, Out of Egypt I called my son." What began as a verse about Israel's exodus from slavery now found deeper meaning in Jesus' temporary exile. The child who would become the new Moses followed the old Moses' path in reverse. The irony runs deeper still. Egypt, once the house of bondage for Israel, now provided refuge for Israel's promised deliverer. The land that had enslaved God's people now sheltered God's son. History's wheel turned full circle as oppressor became protector. Back in Bethlehem, Herod's fury reached its terrible climax. Unable to identify the specific child, he ordered the elimination of all male infants under 2 years old. The timing suggests he calculated carefully. The star had appeared perhaps 2 years earlier. Any child born during that period might be the one. The soldiers arrived without warning. They moved house to house through Bethlehem's narrow streets. Mothers screamed. Fathers fought desperately to protect their families. The sound of weeping filled the air as innocent blood stained the ancient stones. Jeremiah's prophecy echoed through the tragedy. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children. The matriarch's grief found fresh expression in Bethlehem's sorrow. Death visited the city where David was born, where Ruth had gleaned grain, where hope had taken human form just months before. The number of victims remains unknown. Bethlehem was small, perhaps home to only a few dozen male children of the targeted age. Yet each death represented a family destroyed, a future stolen, a mother's heart broken forever. The massacre stands as testament to how far evil will go to preserve itself. Meanwhile, the Holy Family found refuge among Egypt's Jewish population. Alexandria housed a thriving community of Hebrew exiles. They could worship freely, speak their native tongue, raise their children in the faith. Baby Jesus grew his first steps on foreign soil, protected by strangers who shared his heritage. The exile lasted until Herod's death. An angel eventually appeared to Joseph again, announcing it was safe to return. Even then, caution prevailed. Learning that Archelaus ruled Judea, Joseph settled instead in Nazareth of Galilee. The family that had fled to Egypt found their final home in an obscure village, far from royal attention. This chapter reveals how individual choices create cascading consequences. The Magi's visit triggered Herod's paranoia. Their protective silence inflamed his rage. Their departure left innocents vulnerable to his wrath. Yet their obedience to the divine warning also enabled the Holy Family's escape. The flight to Egypt stands as humanity's first glimpse of the cost of salvation. Even in infancy, Jesus experienced exile, danger, loss. The Prince of Peace entered a world at war. The light of the world grew up under shadow. The Magi's gifts may have funded this desperate journey, turning symbols of worship into means of survival. Vanishing kings. What happened to the Magi? The eastern horizon swallowed the Magi as completely as morning mist dissolves in sunlight. Matthew's gospel offers no farewell, no epilogue, no hint of their fate. They simply vanish from the biblical narrative, leaving behind only questions and wonder. This silence has haunted Christians for nearly 2,000 years. What became of these mysterious visitors? Did they return safely to their homeland? Were they changed by what they witnessed in Bethlehem? The Gospel's restraint opens space for imagination to flourish. Early Christian writers couldn't resist filling this void. The Excerpta Latina Barbari, a medieval chronicle, claims the Magi lived to see Jesus at crucifixion and resurrection. According to this account, they became his disciples, spreading the gospel throughout their homeland before meeting martyrs' deaths. The Golden Legend, a popular medieval collection, provides more elaborate details. Melchior supposedly died at age 116, Balthazar at 112, and Gaspar at 109. All three lived long enough to encounter the Apostle Thomas during his missionary journey to India. They were baptized, ordained as bishops, and spent their remaining years building churches across the East. Armenian tradition offers a different path. Here, the Magi return home as changed men, abandoning their former practices to proclaim the coming of the true light. They establish Christian communities throughout Persia, becoming the first missionaries to regions beyond Roman influence. Syrian Christianity preserves perhaps the most poetic account. The Magi return to find their sacred fire extinguished, their ancient temples cold and dark. The star's light has replaced their earthly flames. They realize their old wisdom was merely preparation for the ultimate revelation they discovered in Bethlehem. Archaeological evidence provides tantalizing hints without definitive answers. Early Christian symbols appear in Parthian territories during the 1st and 2nd centuries. Persian religious practices show subtle Christian influences. Trade routes that connected East and West carried more than goods. They transported ideas, beliefs, transformative encounters. The doctrine of Adai, an ancient Syriac text, describes how the Magi's report reached the Persian court. King Artabanus supposedly received detailed accounts of their journey and discoveries. This royal interest led to favorable treatment of early Christian missionaries who later entered Persian territory. Some scholars suggest the Magi may have influenced Zoroastrian thought. Concepts of a savior born of a virgin, the struggle between light and darkness, the ultimate triumph of good over evil, these themes resonate through both traditions. Perhaps the Magi served as bridges between ancient Persian wisdom and emerging Christian truth. The journey home likely took many months. Caravans moved slowly across dangerous terrain. The Magi had time to process their experience, to discuss its implications, to wrestle with its meaning. They had witnessed something unprecedented, deity housed in human flesh, eternity cradled in a mother's arms. Their silence regarding Herod's request suggests deeper transformation than mere political caution. These were men accustomed to royal courts, trained in diplomatic protocol. Their disobedience marked a fundamental shift in allegiance. They had found a king greater than any earthly ruler. The gifts they carried home exceeded gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They bore witness to the incarnation itself. They possessed first-hand testimony of prophecy fulfilled. They had seen the light that would illuminate all nations, beginning with their own. Ancient Persian texts hint at prophetic expectations surrounding this period. The Zandi Vohuman Yasht speaks of a coming savior who would renew the world. The Oracle of Hystaspes predicted a king born in Judea who would establish universal reign. Perhaps the Magi recognized these ancient hopes fulfilled in Bethlehem's baby. Their influence may have extended beyond religious circles. Persian astronomy advanced significantly during the first centuries after Christ. New attention to Western stars appears in their calculations. Trade relationships with Roman territories intensified. The Magi's journey could have opened diplomatic and commercial channels that persisted for generations. The question of their names, Melchior, Balthasar, and Gaspar, belongs to later tradition rather than historical fact. Yet these names carried meaning for medieval Christians. Melchior meant King of Light, Balthasar, Lord of Treasures, and Gaspar, the White One. Each name reflected different aspects of their spiritual significance. Medieval pilgrims claimed to visit their tombs. Cologne Cathedral houses what are purported to be their relics. Whether authentic or not, these shrines testify to Christianity's need to honor those first Gentile worshippers. The Magi represented every non-Jewish seeker who would later find Christ. Their vanishing serves Matthew's theological purpose. These foreign visitors came, worshipped, and departed, leaving no continuing presence to complicate the narrative. They fulfilled their role as witnesses to Christ's universal significance, then stepped aside for the main story to unfold. Perhaps their greatest legacy lies precisely in their mystery. By disappearing so completely, they become eternal symbols rather than historical figures bound by earthly limitations. Every seeker, every searcher, every person following their own star toward divine truth can identify with these vanishing kings. From Magi to Kings, evolution of the legend. Something remarkable happened to the Magi between the 1st century and the medieval period. The mysterious Eastern visitors of Matthew's Gospel transformed into crowned monarchs, complete with royal regalia and earthly kingdoms. This metamorphosis reveals how stories grow and change as they pass through different cultures and centuries. The earliest Christian art depicts the Magi simply. Roman catacombs from the 2nd and 3rd centuries show them as typical travelers of their era, wearing pointed caps, tunics, and trousers characteristic of Persian dress. No crowns adorned their heads. No royal symbols marked their status. They appeared as wealthy foreigners, perhaps merchants or scholars, but certainly not kings. The shift began subtly. Early church fathers wrestled with the visitor's identity. Justin Martyr, writing in the mid-2nd century, described them as men from Arabia. Tertullian called them almost kings because of their evident wealth and influence. These small adjustments planted seeds that would later bloom into full royal status. Psalm 72 provided crucial biblical foundation for the transformation. This ancient song declared, "May the kings of Tarshish and of distant shores bring tribute to him. May the kings of Sheba and Seba present him gifts." Early Christians read this verse as prophecy fulfilled through the Magi's visit. If they brought gifts to the newborn king, logic suggested they must be kings themselves. Isaiah's prophecy added weight to this interpretation. The prophet had written, "Nations will come to your light and kings to the brightness of your dawn." Again, Christians saw the Magi as fulfillment. Foreign rulers journeying to worship Israel's promised deliverer perfectly matched Isaiah's vision. The number 3 played a significant role in their royal elevation. Though Matthew never specifies how many Magi came, the 3 gifts suggested 3 givers. By the 3rd century, Christian tradition had settled on this number. 3 visitors seemed more manageable than an indefinite group, more suitable for artistic representation and theological symbolism. Origen, the great Alexandrian theologian, made an explicit connection around 248 CE. He argued that the Magi were indeed kings, fulfilling Old Testament prophecies about foreign rulers worshiping the Messiah. His scholarly authority helped cement this interpretation throughout the Christian world. The Roman Empire's conversion under Constantine accelerated the process. Christianity now moved in royal circles. Emperors and kings embraced the faith. The image of foreign monarchs worshiping Christ resonated powerfully with Christian rulers who saw themselves as spiritual successors to these legendary kings. Medieval European culture completed the transformation. Feudal society organized itself around kingship and nobility. Royal imagery dominated art, literature, and religious expression. The Magi naturally evolved to fit these cultural expectations. Simple travelers seemed inadequate for such an important role. The Feast of Epiphany celebrated this royal interpretation. January 6th became the day when kings throughout Christendom honored the King of Kings. Royal courts held special celebrations. Monarchs wore their finest regalia in processions commemorating the Magi's visit. The visitors from the East became models for Christian rulership. Artistic representation drove the evolution forward. Mosaics in Ravenna from the 6th century show the Magi wearing elaborate robes and bearing distinctly royal gifts. The famous Bethlehem mosaic depicts them with names inscribed overhead, cementing their individual identities in Christian consciousness. Medieval mystery plays brought the royal Magi to life for ordinary Christians. These dramatic presentations required actors to portray the visitors as recognizable figures of authority. Crowns, scepters, and royal mantles made them immediately identifiable to audiences accustomed to monarchical symbolism. The Crusades intensified Christian fascination with Eastern kings. European knights encountered Persian and Arab rulers whose wealth and wisdom echoed stories of the ancient Magi. These contemporary examples gave substance to legendary accounts, making royal visitors from the East seem entirely plausible. Marco Polo's travels added fresh details to the legend. His accounts of Persian fire worshippers and Zoroastrian Magi provided cultural context for the biblical visitors. European readers could now imagine specific backgrounds for these mysterious figures, complete with royal courts and ancient traditions. Theological significance drove much of the transformation. 3 kings from different nations perfectly symbolized the universal scope of Christ's kingdom. They represented all earthly authority bowing before divine sovereignty. Their royal status emphasized that even the most powerful humans recognized Jesus as supreme ruler. The gifts themselves acquired deeper meaning through royal interpretation. Gold represented temporal kingship, earthly monarchs honoring the eternal king. Frankincense symbolized divine worship, royal priests acknowledging Jesus' deity. Myrrh foretold sacrificial death. Even kings must face mortality, but this king would conquer death itself. Medieval chroniclers expanded the legend systematically. They assigned the Magi specific kingdoms, detailed genealogies, and elaborate court histories. Melchior ruled India, Balthasar governed Babylon, and Gaspar controlled Arabia. Each brought the wealth and wisdom of his realm to lay before the Christ child. This evolution reflects Christianity's growing confidence and cultural influence. The faith that began among fishermen and tax collectors now claimed kings and emperors. The Magi's transformation from scholars to monarchs mirrored Christianity's own journey from persecution to imperial favor. By the medieval period, the royal Magi had become essential to Christian identity. They proved that Jesus' kingdom transcended ethnic and national boundaries. They demonstrated that wisdom and wealth, properly understood, led inevitably to worship. They embodied the hope that all earthly power would ultimately serve divine purposes. Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar, names and faces. For centuries, the Magi remained nameless figures in Christianity's collective memory. Matthew's Gospel offered no identification beyond their Eastern origin and royal status. Yet human nature abhors anonymity, especially for characters of such importance. Gradually, these mysterious visitors acquired names, faces, and detailed biographies that would define them for generations. The earliest naming attempts appear in Syrian Christian texts from the 4th and 5th centuries. The revelation of the Magi, though likely pseudonymous, provides 12 names for the visitors, suggesting a much larger group than tradition would later accept. These early Syrian names, Hormizda, Yazdegerd, Perozad, among others, reflect genuine Persian linguistics and culture. Armenian Christianity offered different names entirely. The infancy Gospel of Matthew, despite its title, emerged from Armenian tradition around the 6th century. Here, the visitors became Melkon, Balthasar, and Gaspar. Close examination reveals these names' cultural significance. Melkon derives from the Semitic root for king, while Balthasar connects to Babylonian royal traditions. The names that ultimately prevailed in Western Christianity first appeared in a Latin manuscript from the 8th century. The Excerpta Latina Barbari recorded them as Bithysaria, Melchior, and Gathaspa. Time and linguistic evolution transformed these into the familiar Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar that medieval Christians would embrace. Each name carried deeper meaning than simple identification. Melchior supposedly meant king of light in Hebrew, connecting this magus to themes of illumination and divine revelation. Balthasar derived from the Babylonian Bel-Shar-Usur, meaning Bel protects the king, linking him to ancient Mesopotamian wisdom traditions. Gaspar presented more complex etymology. Some scholars connect it to Persian Gushnasaf, meaning master of treasure. Others suggest derivation from Gondophares, a historical Parthian king who ruled during the 1st century. This potential connection to actual historical figures added credibility to the legendary accounts. Medieval tradition assigned each magus distinct characteristics beyond their names. Melchior appeared as an elderly man with a long white beard, representing the wisdom that comes with age. His gift of gold symbolized earthly kingship, acknowledging divine sovereignty. European artists consistently portrayed him as dignified and contemplative. Balthasar occupied the middle ground, mature but not ancient, representing the prime of human life and achievement. His frankincense gift connected to priestly functions and divine worship. Medieval accounts often described him as having dark hair and olive complexion, distinguishing him from his companions. Gaspar appeared as the youngest of the three, sometimes depicted as beardless in medieval art. His gift of myrrh, associated with burial and death, created ironic contrast with his youthful appearance. This juxtaposition reinforced Christian themes about death's universal reach and Christ's victory over mortality. The 9th century marked a crucial development in magus identification. A Carolingian manuscript first explicitly described Balthasar as of black skin. This racial designation would profoundly influence Christian art and theology for centuries to come. The three Magi began representing humanity's racial diversity, white, black, and intermediate tones acknowledging Christ's universal appeal. Medieval European art embraced this racial symbolism enthusiastically. Gothic cathedrals featured stained glass windows showing the three races of humanity united in worship. Illuminated manuscripts depicted elaborate processions where racial diversity highlighted the gospel's universal scope. The Black Magus, usually Balthasar, became a powerful statement about Christianity's inclusiveness. This racial interpretation carried significant theological weight. Augustine had written about humanity's dispersion after Babel, scattered across the earth in different peoples and nations. The Magi's reunion at Bethlehem symbolized restoration, divided humanity coming together through Christ's birth. Renaissance art elevated the named Magi to new heights of individual characterization, Painters like Botticelli, Dürer, and Rubens created distinctive personalities for each figure. Melchior's wisdom, Balthasar's devotion, and Gaspar's youthful enthusiasm became standardized across European artistic tradition. The names enabled expanded storytelling possibilities. Medieval romances spun elaborate tales about each king's homeland and journey. The Golden Legend provided detailed biographies, complete with royal lineages and conversion experiences. Popular culture transformed biblical visitors into fully realized literary characters. Cologne Cathedral's role in preserving their supposed relics added historical weight to the names. Pilgrims traveled across Europe to venerate the remains of Melchior, Balthasar, and Gaspar. Physical presence, even if questionable, made these figures seem more historically concrete than anonymous biblical references. The Protestant Reformation challenged many medieval traditions, including elaborate Magi legends. Reformers emphasized scriptural accuracy over popular embellishment. Yet the three names had become so deeply embedded in Christian consciousness that even Protestant communities retained them in their Christmas celebrations. Colonial expansion spread the named Magi worldwide. Spanish missionaries carried their stories to the Americas. Portuguese traders introduced them to Asia and Africa. Each culture adapted the name slightly: Spanish Melchor, Portuguese Melchior, English Melchior, but maintained their essential identity. Modern scholars approach these names with appropriate skepticism. No historical evidence supports their authenticity. They represent medieval creativity rather than ancient memory. Yet their cultural significance transcends historical accuracy. For millions of Christians, Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar remain as real as any biblical character. The naming process reveals something profound about human religious psychology. Abstract theological concepts require concrete expression. Universal principles need particular embodiments. By giving the Magi names and faces, Christianity transformed them from distant symbols into accessible models of faith and worship. These three names continue shaping Christian imagination today. They appear in Christmas pageants, artistic depictions, and popular literature. Children learn their names alongside biblical figures. They bridge the gap between scripture and tradition, between ancient mystery and contemporary faith. The Magi in art and architecture, stone and pigment preserve what words cannot fully capture. Across 17 centuries, Christian artists have wrestled with the mystery of the Magi, translating their story into visual form through countless mediums. From hidden catacomb walls to soaring cathedral spires, their journey to Bethlehem has inspired some of Christianity's most enduring artistic achievements. The earliest Christian art treated the Magi with remarkable simplicity. Roman catacomb paintings from the 2nd and 3rd centuries show them as three figures in Persian dress, pointed caps, flowing robes, and soft boots typical of Eastern travelers. These underground sanctuaries, carved from living rock, provided safe spaces for Christian worship during periods of persecution. The Catacomb of Priscilla contains perhaps the oldest known Magi depiction. Here, in a small arched chamber, an anonymous artist painted three men approaching a seated woman holding a child. A star hovers overhead. The image speaks volumes through its restraint. No crowns, no elaborate gifts, just earnest pilgrims completing their sacred quest. Constantine's conversion transformed Christian art forever. The 4th century witnessed an explosion of ecclesiastical building and decoration. Churches could now display Christian themes openly, boldly, magnificently. The Magi emerged from underground shadows into brilliant light. The great Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome showcased this new confidence. 5th century mosaics along its nave depicted biblical scenes in gleaming gold and vibrant colors. The Magi appear in royal garments, their gifts clearly visible, their importance unmistakable. Imperial approval had elevated both the faith and its artistic expression. Ravenna became the crown jewel of early Christian mosaic art. The city's unique position between East and West, between Roman tradition and Byzantine innovation, created perfect conditions for artistic synthesis. Sant'Apollinare Nuovo contains the most famous early Magi mosaic, showing three figures in elaborate Persian court dress, processing toward the Virgin and Child. Byzantine art developed its own distinctive Magi iconography. Eastern Christianity embraced rich symbolism and theological sophistication. Icons of the Nativity consistently included the Magi, their gifts representing humanity's proper response to divine incarnation. The star above them became increasingly elaborate, sometimes depicted as a luminous angel. The medieval period witnessed the Magi's full transformation into kings. Romanesque sculpture carved them into cathedral portals across Europe. Gothic stained glass windows bathed them in ethereal light. Illuminated manuscripts gave them individual personalities and elaborate retinues. Chartres Cathedral exemplifies Gothic achievement in Magi representation. The south transept's rose window, dating from the 13th century, shows them in a complex theological program linking Old Testament prophecy to New Testament fulfillment. Each king occupies his own medallion, crowned and dignified, bearing gifts toward the central Christ child. The Book of Kells demonstrates how manuscript illumination elevated the Magi story. Irish monks working in scriptoriums across medieval Europe created breathtakingly intricate images. The Magi appear woven into elaborate initial letters, their journey becoming part of the text itself. Celtic knotwork and Christian symbolism merged in transcendent artistic unity. Renaissance masters brought new realism and psychological depth to Magi depictions. Leonardo da Vinci's unfinished Adoration of the Magi reveals the artist's fascination with human emotion and divine mystery. Botticelli's version in the Uffizi transforms the story into contemporary Florentine pageantry, with the Medici family appearing as the three kings. Northern European artists developed their own Magi traditions. Hieronymus Bosch's triptych, The Adoration of the Magi, combines traditional iconography with surreal imagination. Albrecht Dürer's detailed engravings influenced Magi imagery across Protestant regions. Even in Reformed Christianity, these Eastern visitors retained their artistic appeal. Baroque art brought dramatic movement and emotional intensity to the Magi story. Peter Paul Rubens painted multiple versions, each showing dynamic interaction between the visitors and Holy Family. Caravaggio's revolutionary use of light and shadow transformed static scenes into compelling human dramas. Colonial art spread Magi imagery worldwide. Spanish missions in the Americas featured indigenous interpretations of the three kings. African Christian communities created their own distinctive representations. Asian churches developed unique artistic traditions around the Magi story. The Gothic revival of the 19th century renewed interest in medieval Magi iconography. Architects and artists studied historical models, creating new works in ancient styles. This movement coincided with archaeological discoveries that revealed early Christian art to modern audiences. Modern art has continued engaging with the Magi theme. Pablo Picasso created abstract interpretations. Marc Chagall's stained glass windows brought 20th century sensibility to ancient themes. Contemporary artists find ongoing inspiration in these mysterious Eastern visitors. Architecture itself tells the Magi story. Cologne Cathedral rose around their supposed relics, its twin spires reaching toward the star that guided them. Countless churches worldwide bear their names. Sacred spaces honor their memory through stone and steel, wood and glass. The threefold pattern of their gifts influenced architectural symbolism. Church designs often incorporated tripartite elements honoring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Trinity concepts found expression through Magi-inspired decoration. The number 3 became deeply embedded in Christian architectural tradition. Pilgrimage routes developed around Magi sites. Santiago de Compostela claimed connections to their journey. Cologne became a major pilgrimage destination. These routes shaped medieval European development, creating networks of roads, inns, and supporting communities. Contemporary Magi art reflects modern theological concerns. Liberation theology has emphasized the Black Magus as symbol of racial equality. Feminist interpretations explore Mary's role in receiving their worship. Ecological themes connect their star following to environmental awareness. Digital art and virtual reality offer new possibilities for Magi representation. Computer graphics can recreate their journey with unprecedented detail. Interactive media allows viewers to experience their pilgrimage personally. Technology serves ancient mystery in contemporary forms. The Magi's artistic legacy demonstrates art's power to preserve and transmit religious meaning. Through changing styles and cultural contexts, their story remains visually compelling. Each generation finds new ways to honor these first Gentile worshippers, ensuring their journey continues inspiring human creativity and devotion. Relics of the Kings, Cologne Cathedral and the pilgrimage. Deep within Cologne Cathedral, behind gleaming gold and precious stones, rest what millions believe to be the earthly remains of the three Magi. The Shrine of the Three Kings stands as one of medieval Europe's most magnificent reliquaries, housing bones claimed to belong to Melchior, Balthasar, and Gaspar. This golden monument tells a story as fascinating as the biblical account itself. The relic's journey to Cologne reads like an adventure spanning continents and centuries. According to medieval accounts, the bodies of the three kings were first discovered by Saint Helena, Constantine's mother, during her pilgrimage to the Holy Land in the 4th century. Helena, renowned for finding the true cross, supposedly located the Magi's tomb near Jerusalem and transported their remains to Constantinople. From the Byzantine capital, the story grows increasingly complex. The bodies allegedly traveled to Milan sometime during the 6th century, brought by Bishop Eustorgius I as precious gifts for his cathedral. Milan's strategic position on trade routes between northern Europe and the Mediterranean made it a natural resting place for such important relics. The bones remained in Milan for over 6 centuries, drawing pilgrims from across medieval Europe. Santa Eustorgio became renowned for housing the three kings' remains. The church still displays an empty stone sarcophagus, claiming it once held the sacred bones before their dramatic departure. Frederick Barbarossa's conquest of Milan in 1162 changed everything. The Holy Roman Emperor granted his loyal supporter, Archbishop Reinald of Dassel, permission to claim the city's most precious treasures. Among these were the supposed remains of the Magi, which Reinald saw as perfect symbols of imperial authority and divine favor. The journey from Milan to Cologne became a triumphant procession. The relics traveled in elaborate ceremony, stopping at major cities along the route. Crowds gathered to witness their passage. Local nobles competed to host the sacred remains overnight. The transfer took on characteristics of both diplomatic mission and religious pilgrimage. Cologne welcomed the relics with extraordinary celebration. The city's significance as a major commercial center and archiepiscopal seat made it worthy of housing such treasures. More importantly, the Magi's presence would enhance Cologne's status as a pilgrimage destination, bringing prestige and economic benefits. Archbishop Reinald commissioned Nicholas of Verdun to create an appropriate reliquary. The resulting Shrine of the Three Kings represents medieval goldsmith work at its finest. Completed around 1220, it measures over 6 feet long and nearly 4 feet high, crafted from oak and covered with gold, silver, and precious stones. The shrine's artistic program reflects sophisticated theological understanding. Sculptural reliefs depict scenes from Christ's life, prophetic figures from the Old Testament, and the apostles. The Magi appear at the shrine's head, crowned and bearing their gifts, eternally frozen in their moment of worship. 3 crowns atop the shrine symbolize the three kings within. These golden crowns, studded with gems and pearls, became Cologne's heraldic symbols. The city's coat of arms still features 3 crowns, connecting municipal identity to the sacred relics housed within its greatest church. The cathedral itself rose around the shrine. Construction began in 1248, designed specifically to provide a worthy setting for the Magi's remains. The Gothic structure, with its soaring twin spires and luminous interior, created a heavenly Jerusalem around the earthly remains of those who first worshipped the infant Christ. Pilgrimage to Cologne flourished throughout the medieval period. The faithful traveled from across Europe to venerate the three kings. Pilgrimage routes developed, complete with hostels, guides, and supporting industries. The city's economy benefited enormously from religious tourism centered on the Magi shrine. Medieval pilgrims could purchase badges and tokens commemorating their visit. These small metal objects, bearing images of the 3 crowns or the Magi themselves, served as proof of completed pilgrimage. Thousands of such badges have been discovered across Europe, testimony to Cologne's widespread appeal. The Reformation challenged the shrine's significance without destroying it entirely. Protestant criticism of relic veneration reduced pilgrimage numbers, but Catholic regions continued honoring the three kings. The shrine survived iconoclastic violence that destroyed many medieval religious artifacts. Modern archaeology and science have questioned the relic's authenticity. Carbon dating suggests the bones date from different periods, none matching the 1st century. Chemical analysis reveals they likely come from multiple individuals of varying ages and origins. Historical documentation for their journey from Jerusalem to Constantinople remains scarce. Yet authenticity matters less than meaning for millions of believers. The shrine represents something beyond physical remains. It embodies the faith of countless generations who found inspiration in the Magi's story. The gold, precious stones, and artistic mastery declare that these first Gentile worshippers deserve the finest human creativity. World War II brought grave danger to the shrine. Allied bombing devastated Cologne, reducing much of the city to rubble. The cathedral suffered 14 direct hits but remained standing. The shrine was carefully dismantled and hidden in safe locations, preserving its treasures through humanity's darkest hours. Post-war restoration revealed new details about the shrine's construction and history. Careful examination uncovered earlier artistic layers, suggesting continuous renovation and embellishment over centuries. Each generation had added its own touches, creating a cumulative masterpiece spanning medieval and modern periods. Contemporary pilgrimage to Cologne continues, though in different forms. Tourists and believers alike come to witness the shrine's magnificence. The cathedral receives millions of visitors annually, many drawn by curiosity about the Three Kings' legendary remains. Modern transportation has democratized access to what once required months of difficult travel. The shrine's influence extends beyond religious circles. Art historians study its techniques and symbolism. Archaeologists examine its construction methods. Cultural historians explore its role in medieval society. The Magi relics continue generating scholarship and debate centuries after their arrival. Cologne's identity remains inseparably linked to the Three Kings. The city's tourism industry promotes its connection to the biblical Magi. Local festivals celebrate their feast day. Regional traditions maintain customs dating back to medieval pilgrimage culture. The ancient visitors have become permanent residents in Cologne's civic consciousness. The cathedral treasury houses additional Magi-related artifacts. Medieval chalices, vestments, and manuscripts connected to their veneration create a comprehensive collection. These supporting objects tell the broader story of how one community preserved and celebrated its most precious spiritual inheritance. Recent conservation efforts have revealed the shrine's original brilliance. Careful cleaning has restored the gold's luster and the gem's fire. Modern lighting systems illuminate details invisible to medieval pilgrims. Technology serves tradition, making ancient craftsmanship newly visible to contemporary eyes. The Shrine of the Three Kings stands as testimony to human devotion's power to create lasting beauty. Whether or not it contains the actual remains of Matthew's mysterious visitors matters less than what it represents: the transformation of biblical narrative into tangible, lasting form. Through gold and precious stones, medieval craftsmen gave physical presence to spiritual truth. Today's pilgrims, like their medieval predecessors, encounter something profound in Cologne Cathedral. The shrine connects them to an unbroken chain of faith stretching back nearly 2 millennia. In venerating these supposed relics, they participate in humanity's longest-running conversation about divine mystery and human response. The Magi in Islam and other traditions beyond Christianity's borders, the story of the Eastern visitors finds new expressions and deeper meanings. Islam, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and other faiths have encountered the Magi narrative, each tradition adding unique perspectives to these mysterious figures who followed a star to Bethlehem. The Quran mentions Jesus' birth, but focuses primarily on Mary's miraculous experience rather than the visitors who came to worship. Yet Islamic tradition, particularly in the Hadith literature and popular storytelling, embraces the Magi with remarkable warmth. They appear as sincere seekers of divine truth, representatives of humanity's universal longing for guidance. Islamic scholars identified the Magi as followers of an ancient, pure religion that preceded Muhammad's revelation. Some traditions connect them to the prophet Ibrahim's descendants, making their journey to Jesus a reunion of Abrahamic faith. This interpretation transforms their visit from foreign curiosity to family reunion, Eastern cousins recognizing their promised kinsmen. Persian Islamic culture shows particular affinity for the Magi story. Iran's conversion to Islam did not erase appreciation for these ancient Persian wise men who achieved such honor in Christian scripture. Medieval Persian poets like Ferdowsi and Hafez reference the Magi as symbols of wisdom seeking divine illumination. The Sufi tradition found deep symbolism in the Magi's journey. These Islamic mystics saw the three visitors as models of spiritual quest, abandoning worldly concerns to follow divine signs toward ultimate truth. The star became a metaphor for inner light, guiding souls toward union with the divine. Their gifts represented stages of spiritual development. Zoroastrian communities preserved their own Magi traditions with fierce pride. As inheritors of ancient Persian religion, they claimed the biblical visitors as their spiritual ancestors. The Magi's recognition of Jesus validated Zoroastrian wisdom while demonstrating their religion's role in preparing humanity for greater revelation. The Avesta, Zoroastrianism's sacred text, speaks of the Saoshyant, a future savior born of a virgin who will renew the world. Some Zoroastrian interpreters saw Jesus as fulfillment of this prophecy, with the Magi serving as witnesses to their ancient faith's vindication. The star became Ahura Mazda's light guiding faithful priests to recognize divine truth. Modern Zoroastrian communities celebrate the Magi as proof of their religion's noble heritage. In Iran, India, and diaspora communities worldwide, the story demonstrates Zoroastrianism's contribution to human spiritual development. The Magi's wisdom and devotion reflect their faith's highest ideals. Jewish tradition approaches the Magi with complex feelings. The Talmud and medieval rabbinical literature occasionally reference foreign wise men who came to honor a Jewish child, but these accounts remain peripheral to mainstream Jewish thought. The visitors represent Gentile recognition of Jewish spiritual authority without necessarily accepting Christian interpretations. Some Jewish scholars appreciate the Magi as examples of righteous Gentiles, non-Jews who recognize divine truth and act accordingly. Their respectful approach to Jewish territory, their consultation with Jewish religious authorities, and their appropriate gifts demonstrate proper Gentile behavior toward Jewish sanctity. Hindu traditions, particularly those influenced by Christian missionary activity, have developed their own Magi interpretations. The visitors' Eastern origin and apparent wisdom resonate with Hindu concepts of enlightened sages seeking divine truth. Some modern Hindu thinkers see them as early examples of interfaith dialogue and mutual respect. Buddhist communities in regions with Christian influence have similarly embraced the Magi as fellow seekers of enlightenment. Their willingness to undertake difficult journeys following cosmic signs echoes Buddhist stories of disciples seeking wisdom from enlightened teachers. The gifts can be interpreted as offerings appropriate to spiritual masters. African traditional religions have found particular meaning in the Magi story, especially through the medieval tradition of depicting one visitor as black-skinned. This representation validated African spiritual wisdom and demonstrated divine acceptance of all human races. The Magi became symbols of Africa's rightful place in world religions. Native American Christian communities have created unique Magi traditions, often depicting the visitors as representatives of different continents or peoples. Their journey becomes a symbol of all humanity's search for spiritual truth, with each culture contributing its own gifts to divine worship. Modern interfaith dialogue frequently references the Magi as early examples of religious cooperation and mutual respect. Their consultation with Jewish scholars, their peaceful intentions, and their appropriate responses to divine guidance provide models for contemporary religious interaction. New Age spirituality has embraced the Magi as representatives of ancient wisdom traditions. Their astrological knowledge, Eastern origin, and mystical experiences appeal to modern seekers interested in esoteric teachings. The star becomes a symbol of cosmic consciousness guiding humanity towards spiritual evolution. Archaeological discoveries in the Middle East continue revealing connections between different religious traditions during the first century. Trade routes carried more than goods. They transported ideas, beliefs, and spiritual practices. The Magi may represent this cultural exchange at its finest. Eastern wisdom recognizing Western fulfillment. Contemporary scholars study the Magi story as evidence of early religious syncretism. Their account suggests fluid boundaries between different faith traditions, with shared symbols and concepts allowing mutual understanding. This historical reality offers hope for modern interfaith cooperation. The universality of the Magi's appeal demonstrates something profound about human spiritual psychology. Regardless of specific religious affiliation, people respond to stories of sincere seekers following divine guidance toward truth. The Magi transcend sectarian boundaries to become symbols of humanity's universal religious quest. Their journey continues, inspiring new religious movements and spiritual communities. From Baha'i emphasis on progressive revelation to Unitarian Universalist celebration of diverse wisdom traditions, the Magi provide scriptural foundation for inclusive religious vision. Even secular humanists find value in the Magi narrative. Their dedication to knowledge, willingness to travel great distances for truth, and generous response to discovery embody human virtues that transcend religious boundaries. They represent humanity at its best: curious, courageous, and generous. Theological interpretations. Why the Magi matter. The Eastern visitors carry weight beyond their historical footprints. Their brief appearance in Matthew's Gospel opens profound theological depths that Christian thinkers have explored for nearly 2 millennia. Every detail of their story pulses with symbolic meaning, each element revealing crucial truths about God's relationship with humanity. Their foreign origin speaks first and loudest. These were not Jews, not descendants of Abraham, not inheritors of Moses' law or David's promises. Yet they came seeking the King of the Jews with reverence and determination that put many Israelites to shame. Their journey declares from the story's opening that God's salvation extends beyond ethnic boundaries. The Gospel of Matthew, written primarily for Jewish audiences, uses the Magi to address a burning question. What about the Gentiles? If Jesus is Israel's Messiah, what role do non-Jews play in God's plan? The Magi provide the answer. They represent all nations streaming toward Zion, fulfilling Isaiah's vision of universal worship. Their wisdom tradition matters deeply. These were not casual travelers or curious tourists. They possessed sophisticated knowledge systems, understood celestial movements, interpreted cosmic signs, yet their learning led them to seek someone greater than themselves. True wisdom recognizes its limitations and searches for ultimate truth beyond human achievement. The star they followed bridges heaven and earth. This celestial phenomenon, whether natural or supernatural, demonstrates God's sovereignty over creation. The same God who placed stars in their courses uses them to guide seekers toward his Son. Nature becomes revelation. Cosmic order serves redemptive purpose. Their timing reveals divine precision. They arrived not at Jesus' Hague birth, but during his early childhood when the Holy Family had settled into more stable circumstances. This delay suggests that God orchestrates events according to his perfect schedule, not human expectations or convenience. The gifts carry theological freight far exceeding their material value. Gold acknowledges Jesus' royal status. Even as an infant, he commands tribute from earthly rulers. Frankincense recognizes his divinity. Deity deserves worship with the finest offerings. Myrrh prophesies his death. The child who receives burial spices will conquer death itself. Each gift also represents humanity's proper response to incarnation. Gold symbolizes our material resources dedicated to divine service. Frankincense represents our worship and prayer, ascending like incense before God's throne. Myrrh acknowledges our mortality and need for salvation that only divine sacrifice can provide. Their encounter with Herod illuminates the contrast between earthly and heavenly kingdoms. Herod rules through fear, manipulation, and violence. The infant king they seek will establish his reign through love, service, and sacrifice. Their preference for the child over the established monarch reveals the kingdom of heaven's revolutionary nature. The dream warning demonstrates God's protective care for both his son and faithful seekers. Divine revelation comes through multiple channels: stars, scriptures, dreams, ensuring that those who genuinely seek truth receive guidance. God's communication adapts to human capacity and cultural understanding. Their return by another route symbolizes transformation. They cannot go back the same way because they have become different people. Encountering Jesus changes everything: perspectives, priorities, purposes. True worship always results in altered life direction. The theological concept of revelation finds perfect expression in the Magi story. They represent natural revelation, human reason and observation leading toward God. Jewish scriptures provided special revelation, specific divine communication through chosen people. Christ himself embodies ultimate revelation, God made flesh, dwelling among humanity. Their story addresses the relationship between faith and reason. The Magi used intellectual tools, astronomy, geography, cultural knowledge to seek divine truth. Yet reason alone proved insufficient. They needed scriptural guidance and divine direction to complete their quest. Faith and reason worked together, each contributing to spiritual discovery. The narrative explores the tension between particular and universal in God's plan. Jesus came as a specific Jewish child in a particular place and time, yet his significance transcends ethnic and geographical boundaries. The Magi represent the universal reaching toward the particular, all nations finding salvation through one chosen people. Their worship establishes patterns for Christian devotion. They brought gifts, bowed in reverence, offered tribute to divine authority. Their response models appropriate human behavior before God, generous, humble, acknowledging supreme worth and absolute sovereignty. The story prefigures the Church's missionary mandate. If Eastern Gentiles could seek and find Christ during his infancy, later believers should expect the gospel to spread throughout all nations. The Magi's journey prophesies Christianity's global expansion, beginning with Jerusalem but reaching Earth's remotest corners. Their account also demonstrates the relationship between Old and New Testaments. Ancient prophecies find fulfillment in contemporary events. Psalms about kings bringing tribute, Isaiah's visions of nations seeking light, Micah's predictions about Bethlehem all converge in this brief narrative. Scripture interprets itself through unfolding events. The Epiphany tradition, celebrating the Magi's visit, emphasizes divine self-revelation to all humanity. Jesus' manifestation to these foreign visitors signals God's intention to include every nation, tribe, and tongue in his redemptive plan. Their worship anticipates the ultimate gathering described in Revelation. Modern liberation theology finds rich material in the Magi story. Oppressed peoples identify with foreign seekers who find God's favor, while established religious and political authorities resist divine truth. The Magi represent marginalized peoples discovering their place in God's kingdom. Feminist interpreters note the Magi's respectful approach to Mary. They honor both mother and child, recognizing the crucial role of women in salvation history. Their gifts benefit the entire Holy Family, supporting the vulnerable in their time of need. The ecological implications of their star following resonate with contemporary environmental awareness. They read creation signs accurately, allowing natural phenomena to guide them toward divine encounter. Their example suggests harmony between human wisdom and natural revelation. Ultimately, the Magi matter because they represent every person's spiritual journey. They symbolize the human quest for meaning, truth, and divine connection that transcends cultural boundaries. Their story assures seekers from every background that God welcomes sincere worship, guides faithful searching, and rewards those who genuinely seek his face. Legacy of the Star Seekers, a story retold. 2,000 years have passed since Eastern visitors followed a star to Bethlehem, yet their story refuses to fade into historical memory. Instead, it grows stronger with each retelling, accumulating new meanings while preserving ancient truths. The Magi have become eternal symbols, their journey representing humanity's endless search for divine purpose and transcendent meaning. Children around the world learn their names before they can read. Balthasar, Melchior, and Gaspar appear in Christmas pageants, their cardboard crowns and bathrobes somehow capturing the mystery that eluded medieval artists working with gold and precious stones. Each generation discovers these mysterious visitors anew, finding in their story whatever truth their hearts most need. The Magi's endurance in human imagination reflects something profound about the story itself. Unlike many biblical narratives that require theological training to fully appreciate, the Magi tale speaks immediately to universal human experiences. Everyone understands the desire to seek something greater than themselves. Everyone recognizes the courage required to leave familiar territory for unknown destinations. Their transformation over centuries mirrors humanity's evolving understanding of divine mystery. Simple travelers became elaborate kings because people needed earthly authority figures to validate heavenly truth. Persian scholars acquired African and European features because the gospel's universal appeal demanded visible diversity. Anonymous visitors received individual names because personal relationships matter more than abstract concepts. Each cultural interpretation has added layers without diminishing the story's core power. Spanish conquistadors saw the Magi as divine endorsement for European expansion. African communities found validation in medieval traditions depicting one visitor as black-skinned. Asian Christians connected their journey to ancient trade routes that linked East and West. The Renaissance elevated them to artistic immortality. Protestant reformers questioned their elaborate legends while preserving their essential meaning. Enlightenment thinkers analyzed their historical plausibility. Romantic poets found in them symbols of inspiration and wonder. Each era has claimed the Magi as their own. Modern psychology discovers new depths in their ancient story. Carl Jung saw them as archetypes of the spiritual seeker, following inner guidance toward individuation and wholeness. Joseph Campbell included their journey among his universal hero myths, describing their quest as humanity's eternal adventure toward meaning and purpose. Contemporary astronomy has attempted to identify their star, proposing planetary conjunctions, comets, and supernovas as historical explanations. These scientific investigations, rather than diminishing the story's power, demonstrate its continued relevance. The same human curiosity that drove ancient Magi to study celestial phenomena motivates modern researchers to understand cosmic mysteries. The space age has given new resonance to their star following. As humanity ventures beyond Earth's atmosphere, we become literal followers of stars, seeking new worlds and possibilities among distant suns. The Magi's willingness to trust cosmic guidance speaks to our species' deep longing for exploration and discovery. Digital technology has democratized access to their story. Children in remote villages can now see the same artistic masterpieces that once required pilgrimages to European cathedrals. Virtual reality experiences allow people to join the Magi's journey, experiencing their adventure firsthand across computer-generated landscapes. The environmental movement has found unexpected inspiration in their tale. The Magi read natural signs accurately, allowing creation itself to guide them toward divine encounter. Their example suggests possible harmony between human wisdom and ecological awareness, between spiritual seeking and environmental responsibility. Interfaith dialogue continues finding common ground in the Magi story. Their respectful approach to different religious authorities, their peaceful intentions, and their appropriate responses to divine guidance provide models for contemporary religious cooperation. They demonstrate that sincere seekers can find unity despite diverse backgrounds. The story's adaptability ensures its survival in changing cultural contexts. Hollywood films present them as action heroes. Children's books reimagine them as anthropomorphic animals. Science fiction writers transport them to distant galaxies, yet each adaptation preserves their essential characteristics: wisdom, dedication, generous worship. Their gifts retain symbolic power in modern contexts. Gold still represents material dedication to worthy causes. Frankincense continues symbolizing worship and reverence. Myrrh reminds us of mortality and the need for healing. These ancient offerings speak to contemporary concerns about economic justice, spiritual authenticity, and human vulnerability. Educational institutions have adopted the Magi as symbols of learning and discovery. Universities worldwide feature them in their iconography, representing the academic quest for truth and understanding. Libraries and museums display Magi imagery, connecting their ancient search for wisdom to modern scholarship. The tourism industry has capitalized on their enduring appeal. Pilgrimage routes trace their supposed journey from Persia to Palestine. Cologne Cathedral markets its shrine as Europe's premier Magi destination. Bethlehem promotes itself as the goal of their ancient quest. Their story continues generating economic activity across multiple continents. Social justice movements have claimed the Magi as early examples of cross-cultural cooperation and racial harmony. Their medieval representation as three different races provides biblical foundation for equality and inclusion. Their respectful behavior toward foreign cultures offers models for contemporary international relations. The therapeutic community has discovered healing power in their narrative. Addiction recovery programs use their journey as metaphor for spiritual transformation. Grief counselors reference their gifts of myrrh when discussing death and loss. Marriage therapists point to their cooperative quest as model for partnership and shared purpose. Climate change activists find relevance in their star following. Just as ancient magi read celestial signs to guide their journey, modern environmentalists urge humanity to read creation's warning signs and change course accordingly. Their willingness to undertake difficult travel for important purposes inspires contemporary calls for lifestyle changes. The Magi's legacy ultimately transcends specific religious boundaries to address universal human longings. They represent everyone who has ever looked at the night sky and wondered about life's meaning. They symbolize every person who has left security to pursue a dream. They embody the hope that sincere seeking will find worthy goals. Their story endures because it addresses humanity's deepest questions while remaining accessible to the simplest understanding. Children grasp their basic narrative immediately. Scholars spend lifetimes exploring their implications. Artists find endless inspiration in their mystery. Believers discover fresh meaning in their worship. As long as humans gaze at stars and wonder about their purpose, as long as people leave familiar places to seek greater truths, as long as the human heart yearns for encounters with the divine, the Magi will continue their eternal journey. They have become more than historical figures or legendary characters. They are mirrors reflecting humanity's highest aspirations, guides pointing toward transcendent possibility, companions for every soul that dares to follow its own star toward whatever Bethlehem awaits.